Hello and welcome to Real Estate Divas. Today we are going to be talking about loan servicing and all the reasons why you should or really have to legally use a loan servicer right after this. Hello. Today on Real Estate Divas, I am very excited, along with my fabulous co-host, Jer'Leigh Thompson, to have my very good friend, Amy Sayre from August REI. Amy, you and I have known each other how many years?
13.
13 years.
And worked together 10.
Right. One of my best business decisions when I was starting out originating notes was to transfer my entire portfolio over to August REI. And you remember the whole drama with that. I just dropped a bunch of files on your desk and I said, handle this. I'm going to Europe for 6 weeks.
And I said I would.
Yeah, and you did. And it's been phenomenal.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
So again,
I think I remember you telling me that years ago, whenever we first met, you're like, oh, you're going to love Amy. And she literally saved my life.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah.
I was so when I was determined I was retiring from real estate investing. This is like June 2012.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And how'd that work out for you?
It lasted a day.
Yeah.
All of a sudden somebody called me and they're like, Kristin, I got a great house.
Yeah.
Come on,
Come on over.
Could you want to see it? And I'm like, well, I'm on my way to Paris. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, can you send me details? I bought the house before I actually got back to the States. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and take that.
Yeah.
So you really left real estate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For a total of 24 hours?
Yeah.
Well, and so for everybody, because there's a ton of people, I know when I first got into real estate, I had no idea what loan service, I had no idea what any of that meant. And there's still a plethora of people that don't. So give us kind of what it is, like the abbreviated version, because I know it's a long list, but
Okay.
What do you do?
Well, after the loan closes, we get the legal docs, lender information for depositing money, and tax information, and for the borrowers. And we board the loan and send out a welcome packet and start collecting payments and direct depositing money for the P&I portion to lenders and collecting the taxes and insurance and sending the homeowner their monthly mortgage statement as required by law with all the details that are required.
Nice.
So in a nutshell, you collect payments
Yes,
on investors' owner finance mortgage loans.
correct. From point A to point B,
Right.
just in the middle,
And
moving it.
specifically for those who are watching, it's investor owner finance. That's
Correct.
it. That's y'all's niche.
Exactly, owner
Yeah.
finance notes.
Very nice.
But you will also service for banks or
We do.
hard money lenders. So if you're
We
a
do.
hard money lender out there and you want to do, even if you have an interest only loan, August REI can service it.
We service a lot of those.
Right. So the crazy thing, and as a note buyer for Capricorn Mortgage, I get notes all the time that the investor is collecting the payments. Mm-hmm. And I tell them, I'm like, I'm not good enough to collect my own payments. I'm not going to do it legally. So what's the number one thing? You've got to send out a mortgage statement every month.
Well, that would includes the principal balance, how the payment was applied, the interest rate, what you broke down between taxes and insurance, and the escrow balance.
Yeah, and I don't think that there are very many.
No, most of the owner finance guys that are doing it, and I say guys and girls, most of the owner finance investors, if they are servicing their own notes, they're not doing that.
What's required?
Yeah,
It's required.
It's required.
Well,
just side note, it's required.
the crazy thing that I always don't get is if you set it up from the time you originate this note, right? You're an owner finance investor, you buy a house, you fix it up, you find a borrower to give you a down payment and you set up the payments. You do that. If you set it up from the beginning, the borrower pays the loan servicing fee.
Yeah.
Which is only like $35. It doesn't even raise their payment that much.
No, it's 95% of the notes we service. the homeowner's paying for it or investor.
Yeah.
It's paying for the cost of servicing and it costs the lender nothing.
Right. Yeah, which is crazy to me. And I'm like, why wouldn't you do this? You're basically getting the management of your asset, like a property manager.
For free.
For free.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's the one thing I've never understood. What are some of the pitfalls that you run into that you see?
Such as the ones that we board in that have not been serviced?
Yeah. By the way, when she says when we board a loan, that means that they take it into their company and set it up.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes.
Sorry. So, we had a couple come in where they applied the full payment to principal, even though they were still paying out on taxes and insurance. That was probably the hardest one to reset and explain to the homeowner that they didn't owe $23,000, they owed $87,000.
Oh, wow.
Because they never applied anything to interest. They just put the entire payment to principal, paid out taxes and insurance from the money they received in, but never credited it that way, or ever had an escrow analysis in 6 years. So,
because they were doing it themselves.
correct. And they wanted to sell it. And
You can't sell it like that.
we had to board the loan and reconcile the account and break the news to them.
Yeah.
Well, that's a tough one.
It was.
I mean, well, I mean, it's kind of like, for the people out there that don't really understand loan servicing and everything, it's kind of like whenever you're sitting there making these payments, and then let's say they don't apply it at all and it gets foreclosed on.
You have to apply payments the day you receive them.
Yeah.
And credit it to the account. You can't just sit on the payments and wait till you have time to go to the bank. You have to credit it for the day that you receive it. It's a requirement. Most of the ones that come in are actually, that we put in that have problems, they've never adjusted the escrow. And that's usually across the board. The escrows are really negative because they've never done one and haven't reconciled the account. And
especially if you have underlying liens that are collecting the escrows.
Mm-hmm. It's a straight pass through. So you have to actually take the statement that you receive for the escrow analysis and cut out the important parts of it, showing the escrow, and change the borrower's payment annually. And it's important that you do it in a timely manner. Otherwise, you're having to cover that difference if it increased monthly.
How do you explain to the borrower that their payment changes annually?
Well, it's kind of interesting because a lot of borrowers will reply back, my payment's the same for life. Obviously, you don't know what you're doing. And we have to explain, no, your P&I payment,
Yep.
on most of them, stay the same for life. And that your taxes and insurance increase. In order to do that, we have to increase your escrow.
Yep.
So we have a whole little spreadsheet and little videos for
flash for most homeowners. I mean, just as being a realtor, trying to explain that, because I can't tell you how many times I've gotten a phone call a year and a half later from a client going, what just happened here? My payment just went up. My payment, what's going on? And I'm like, well, did you talk to your bank? Your taxes probably went up. What do you know what you're, why are you calling me?
That's great. A year and a half after you sell somebody a house, they're calling you.
Yeah. I've had.
What did you do here?
Yeah. What did you get me into?
I agree. I think the best thing that actually happened last year, and it's all because of the realtors push, was that you can immediately file for your homestead. So we don't have, homeowners having to wait and remember to do it in January, because we used to send out a little colorful flyer that said, remember, if you're eligible to file for your homestead, do so now. And it would go out with their 1098s. Mm-hmm. And nobody would really do it. And then they'd get their new escrow analysis with the new increased taxes without a homestead. And they'd freak out and be calling, and we'd have to explain how to apply for your homestead.
Yep.
We have that all on a little thumbnail video we send out and in paper and walk people through to do that. But now when it's part of our welcome packet, because they can file immediately.
Which is awesome. Well, and that was one of those things that it was, as a realtor, if I sold something in April, then I would try to remind them, I know that but then that's something else I've got to keep track of for a client that I closed earlier in the year, or at the end of this fiscal year, the following year. It's kind of a pain, and it's
That's
amazing.
a nice service you provide. It's not,
Now I don't have to.
I was going to say, that must be what makes her extra special.
Extra special.
Yeah. So escrows.
Mm-hmm.
What about for all of those investors who don't want to collect escrows, which is crazy to me?
Well, unless your borrower put down over 20%, you're required by law to have an escrow for the first 60 months,
Really?
or until they pay down 20%. If they start making lump sum payments, it's a requirement.
Okay, so they have to have, 20% equity in that property.
Right. I mean, we do have loans that come in and lenders are like, well, I already told them I'm not going to collect it. And then we, just let them know what the law is and say, please reply to the email that you were declining us collecting an escrow. So we have it on file. And, that's their choice. But, we also get probably over half of them calling us back saying, my homeowner didn't pay their taxes. What are you going to do about it? Well, you have a discounted servicing rate because I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
But, we have a little form letter we'll send out and gently remind them, or the lender has the option then to pay them themselves and force place an escrow on the account, which makes the escrow really high because they're collecting last year's taxes and this year's.
And this year's.
So usually they end up spreading over 24 months their reimbursement to themselves, so you don't have your buyer falling out.
Well, and just for those watching, escrow basically it's in place for those taxes, because taxes get paid on you're not making payments to the government on a monthly basis.
Correct.
You're holding all of those taxes in a bank account so that they can get paid when the taxes come due.
And
When the
insurance.
Yes, and insurance. Yep.
Are there any other legal requirements? I'm sure there are to stay in compliance. Obviously, we've talked about escrows. We've talked about sending out monthly mortgage statements. But, for the average investor out there, they're not keeping track monthly of the principal and interest balances.
Well, the requirement that you send a statement out, and the Texas passed SB 43, which is the wrap mortgage law that they put in place, and it requires servicing for anyone who has a wrap mortgage or an underlying debt, that the servicer pay it directly now.
Wow, so it's required by law.
By the state of Texas. So if you're not in Texas,
It might be something different.
yes.
But it's required by law to use a note servicer if you have underlying debt on the property.
Correct.
What percentage of loans do you see are wrap mortgages with underlying debt?
It really varies. So when we had the 2007 and 8, 2009 through 12, a large percent of what we were boarding were wrap mortgages. Then it went back down to we were boarding a lot of free and clear, or I call them F&Cs. But now we are going back up on these underlying mortgages that are coming in. So it's very cyclical based on where the economy is.
But you do see a lot of them.
Yes, a lot.
And do a lot of other servicers service wrap mortgages?
I can't speak to all servicer. I know there's several that won't.
And I've heard that.
And you have to work really hard on it. There's a liability with it too. So we have, a disclosure that you have to provide us this information so we can properly service your loan.
I would imagine that with the wrap mortgages, it's again kind of a niche industry. Like some of our loan providers, they only sell these products. Your typical, big box banks or cookie cutter banks, they're only doing certain things,
Right.
and those are very limited. And you've got to go outside of that in order to find somebody that'll service those types of loans.
I agree. It is a lot of work,
Yep.
but it's also a needed service because a lot of investors leveraging other people's capital is,
Part of the game.
magical.
It is magical. I know I enjoy infinite returns.
Exactly.
If I can borrow 100% loan to cost and
Absolutely.
It is
owner finance it, create a note, do whatever. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing to have underlying debt on these mortgages.
And when you're leveraging other people's, it's even better.
Yeah. Well,
So how long has this been a business, y'all's business?
As August REI
Yes.
since 2009.
Oh, wow.
So before that, I did it for friends and family and other close investors of my parents.
Nice.
So I had a knack for doing math, and my mother would call and say, so-and-so needs a payoff, and they sent them the principal balance and they rejected it. Can you make a payoff for them? So, I calculated the prorated interest, et cetera, on that, make a payoff for them. way back in the day, and it was an Excel spreadsheet. Now I have fancy software, but it was in college.
Tracking hundreds. Yeah.
When I was in college, and she'd make a phone call. And
That's
then I'd
wild.
do it and print it off and fax it to someone. And I'm pretty sure it went on curly paper at the time.
That's funny. That's funny. And y'all met because she.
We met in a real estate investor's office, and she was doing a closing or helping out with a closing, and she noticed that on my driver's license that we had the same birthday.
Yep.
And she decided that meant something.
Apparently
And
it
we became great friends over.
I determined it meant we needed a free lunch from the person who was so slow at closing first.
And we got that lunch.
We did get that lunch.
We got that lunch.
I said it, and she followed up with and I believe it should be sushi.
Because the closing was on our birthday. And so we're both there working.
That's funny.
And so I'm like, well, it's my birthday.
Exactly.
That's funny.
Yeah, so that's how we started. And then it took, it took a few years. I had tried probably 5 different loan servicers. And nothing was like, and she, she's like, you don't have any loans for me? And so I'd throw her 1 or 2, and I'm like, okay, do these. Those loans always were current. And I wanted to find out what she did. So I started calling her like my own personal pit bull. If anybody gets behind, she's got a whole staff of people that start calling. It's just start calling and harassing everybody.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not harassing. It's
It's not harassing.
Yes.
It's debt collecting, and they do it legally.
Yep.
I'm sure.
Following the fair debt
But
collecting laws.
I had a borrower who I said, so I'm so excited you finally got caught up. Why did you? He goes, I just wanted them to stop calling me. It was awesome. And I'm like, okay. Here's everything. I'm like, just take them all. I'm like, some of these are at other servicers. You're going to have to get it from them. I'm like, I'm out.
Well, that first day obviously paid off, and it's been smooth sailing ever since.
Very smooth.
So you're like, eh. But as far as what would you say? I know the biggest problem is people trying to service their own loans. What would you say is the second biggest problem when it comes to?
Homeowners not realizing when it says we're collecting taxes and insurance, that insurance policy they paid at closing is for the current year and we're collecting for next year. So they'll cancel their policies because they think we're making monthly payments for them. And we have to re-explain to them, and they have to get that money back that they got back from the insurance back on there because they're in breach of their agreement.
Oh, wow. I never even thought about that.
I've had to explain that to so many homeowners and
never
borrowers.
even thought about that.
That's probably the biggest one. And getting insurance placed correctly, and especially if an underlying mortgage has been sold, having to get the mortgagee clause corrected, reapplied.
Wow.
Because the lender truly has to work with us, because it's either their underlying debt or their power of attorney, and we can set it up correctly, but they've got to talk to them if it doesn't get applied. Make sure it gets there. Once they're applied, and as long as the mortgage isn't sold, it just renews and just keeps going smoothly, as long as the insurance company decides not to pull out of Texas, which they do from time to time.
Time to time.
Well,
yeah.
the important, I love the fact that it is required by law in Texas, if you have any underlying debt, that you have to use a loan servicer. But I still don't understand why any investor wouldn't just use one, especially if you're going to have your borrower pay for it, because it's just free management.
I can't explain that.
No, I mean, I talked
She's
about
serious.
it.
She's baffled.
I am baffled.
Like,
I had this
somebody write in. Tell her.
I had this conversation about 3 or 4 times.
Yep.
With 3 or 4 different investors this past weekend at the Real Estate Expo. And I just kept saying, I'm like, why wouldn't you have somebody?
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, your borrower pays for it. It's required by law. You're not doing it right. I go, and if you want me to buy your note, it makes it more valuable because I don't have to guess. I mean, I know that she's got
the records are there. You can prove everything. Yeah.
And she's got a license.
Yeah.
On the line. So I know that everything is being done legally, and those payments are correct.
And you're not having to get photocopies of payments to see when they actually were received.
Yeah. Great. If anybody wants to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
They can email info at August REI, which is just the month August, and then R as in Robert, E as in Echo, I as in Igloo.com, or they can call 972-767-9219.
Nice.
You're like, wait, let me think about that. Now that we don't have to remember numbers, it's all on our phone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, awesome. Thank you for coming in today. It's so awesome to see you.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, if y'all have
been fun.
any questions whatsoever, then be sure to write in. Again, I know there's a lot of people out there that don't understand what loan servicing is. You made it really simple, but if you have any questions, she can tell you all the different nuances, or if there's something you want to know about, be sure to write in and follow, all that business. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok now.
And anywhere you get your podcasts.
Yes, podcasts, Instagram, all of it. Anyway, I'm Jer'Leigh Thompson with Texel Real Estate.
And I'm Kristin Gerst with Capricorn Mortgage.
Thanks for joining us, and thank you, Amy, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, ladies.
All right. Y'all have a good one.